Välkomna till det här webbinariet. Danny Kessel heter jag och de flesta av er känner nog mig. Men för er som inte gör det så är jag skolvalsforskare och vd för det som heter Mitt Skolval. Mitt Skolval är ett forskargrundat och forskardrivet företag som hjälper kommuner och fristående huvudmän med skolvalet i Sverige. Vi har gjort det i 5 år nu. Vi verkar i dagsläget i nästan 30 kommuner. Det är lite om oss. Det här webbinariet ska handla om det vi i Mitt Skolval har pratat om som skolval 2.0. Så nästa steg i skolvalet. Att genomföra ett skolval i sig är ju komplext nog. Och det vet ju de flesta av er som är här. Det är en väldig massa administration och att lista ut så att säga, hur många platser som finns var och se till så att alla får möjlighet att göra ett val och att man mäter rätt och reglerna tillämpas på rätt sätt och så vidare. Alla får beslut och besked på rätt sätt och kan överklaga och allt vad det är. Det är otroligt många olika steg som ska till för att man ska lyckas genomföra ett skolval. Här kan man väl säga att vi har kommit ganska långt i Sverige nu. De senaste åren har vi liksom utvecklat det här på diverse olika sätt och börjar närma oss någonting som så att säga rent administrativt fungerar. Det finns fortfarande lite problem naturligtvis med lagstiftning som ligger efter och sådär, men generellt så liksom den administrativa grunden där kanske vi har på plats inom kort. Och då har vi börjat tänka i Mitt Skolval, vad är nästa steg? Och det vi tänker om man tänker nästa stora steg, det är ju att man på något sätt ska försöka använda den här informationen och teknologin som vi har och som vi så att säga använder i löpande arbetet hela tiden för att skapa förutsättningar för de olika aktörerna i skolvalet att ta så bra beslut som möjligt egentligen. Och det här är en utmaning som vi kanske inte riktigt har gett oss på tidigare, i alla fall inte i någon större utsträckning, men det är nog nästa stora steg för att skolvalet ska upplevas som något som fungerar bra och genererar de positiva effekter vi är ute efter. Och jag kan ta några exempel här på saker som liksom är problematiska eller som tecken som visar att vi inte har löst det här och att vi har problem. Vi genomförde i skolvalet i 20 kommuner förra året. Tittar man på det totala antalet elever där så var det ungefär 5% av barnen som inte fick någon skola de hade önskat. De placeras alltså inte på skola de aktivt hade önskat. Och det här kan man ju så att säga, det är ett direkt exempel på att man kanske har ett misslyckande här. För de här barnen, de här familjerna, det är svårt att tänka sig att de, förutom skolorna de hade önskat, ofta 1 eller 2 eller 3 stycken, att de förutom dem inte har någon preferens var de ska hamna. Och att de då inte inte får någon plats på någon av de här skolorna, de hade nog gärna velat lämna in fler val, men gjorde inte det av någon anledning. Och det är någon slags misslyckande där vi inte har lyckats ge familjer tillräckligt god information och på ett bra sätt för att de så att säga ska kunna göra det bästa möjliga av sin situation. Kopplat till det här kan man ju säga att liksom, det är många som inte får någon skola de vill ha och inte får det så att säga. Även om de kanske får en vald skola kanske de är tvungna att välja ett visst antal skolor och sådär. Så de får inte ett visst skola de vill ha. Och då får de ett besked som dimper ner i lådan eller som de laddar ner i en e-tjänst. Och direkt i samband med det beskedet, direkt när de får den här informationen att de inte fick den skola de ville ha, då får de också en information om att så här överklagar man. Så här går ni vidare med det här om ni inte är nöjda. Och det är väl rätt och riktigt att de får den informationen. Men det är kanske inte optimalt att inte ha förberett folk överhuvudtaget på att de inte kommer få den plats de vill ha. Om man liksom förväntar sig att man ska få den skola man vill ha, man har tänkt här har vi alla grannar har ju fått den här skolan förut och så vidare, och sen visar det sig att man fick inte den. Och precis i samband med att man får den här ganska jobbiga informationen så står det så här tar ni det här till domstolarna. Då blir det väldigt många som gör det. Och det ser vi ju exempel på nu, men överbelastad kan man väl säga, överbelastad överklagande nämnd här i Sverige. Och vi har ju sett exempel de senaste åren där i vissa kommuner upp till 20% av alla placeringar överklagas. Så det blir väldigt verifierat väldigt snabbt i den här processen. Ett annat exempel man kan ta, eller man kan säga också då, är att det man skulle kunna tänka sig, det vi har sett lite exempel på i vissa kommuner där man har haft lite mjuklandningar här, det är ju att överklagandena går ner väldigt mycket. Alltså har man lite tid på sig att förbereda sig på det här beskedet och förstå vad det innebär och kanske åka och kolla på den här skolan om man är intresserad av och så vidare, så är folk mindre benägna att överklaga. För det var inte så fruktansvärt utfall som de trodde. Eller som de upplevde i stunden de fick beskedet. Så det är en del av det, föräldrarna och familjernas möjligheter att veta vilka skolor de kan välja och sådär. Och vad de har för chanser och så vidare. Den andra delen av det är ju ni som jobbar med skolvalet på fristående skolor och kommunala skolor eller i kommunerna. Och där kan man ju säga att det kan ju vara väldigt svårt, det ser vi i vår så att säga verklighet, att det kan vara väldigt svårt att följa skolvalet medan det pågår. Man vet inte nödvändigtvis när skolvalet sker vad som är trenderna. Är det så att vissa skolor nu är mer översökta än tidigare, andra har mindre söktryck och så vidare. Den här informationen skulle man ju potentiellt kunna ha. Man kan ju jämföra med tidigare år och se vid det här laget i skolvalet hur många hade valt de här skolorna till exempel och hur såg söktrycket ut. Är det så att vi ser ett skifte, något som har förändrats här, så man kan börja förbereda sig tidigare. Och desto tidigare man kan förbereda sig på hur söktrycket kommer se ut och vad folk kommer söka, desto mer insatser kan man göra. Och det kan ju handla om information naturligtvis, att berätta vad det finns för alternativ och hur man kan göra och sådär. Men också om att faktiskt tänka på potentiella omorganiseringar och så vidare. Man ser liksom att man kommer få problem i samband med placeringen som ska göras ett antal veckor senare. Kanske man potentiellt kan se redan efter en vecka in i skolvalet och så vidare. Så det finns ju mycket att hämta där, både från så att säga med informationen, om man kunde utilitisera den på ett bättre sätt. Mycket att hämta både för föräldrarna naturligtvis, men också för er som jobbar med skolvalet. Det har gjorts några försök med det här i Sverige kan man väl säga. Jag kan nämna några exempel. Så, något som finns ett ganska stort antal av i Sverige är ju skolväljare eller skolledarsystem där man kan gå in och se de här skolorna som finns och lite information på dem. Ofta så är innehåller ju de här bara så att säga lite statistik, ofta från Skolverkets databas, ibland även trivselenkäter eller liknande. De är inte så personliga nödvändigtvis, det är inte så mycket information om skolorna utan de mest visar att de finns. Och de vi har sett och de vi vet hur de funkar ser vi ju att de används ganska begränsat. De är inte jättepopulära kan man väl säga. En annan sak som har testats på i några kommuner som har funkat ganska bra, det är ju bilagor där man berättar exakt varför någon fick en plats. Så i samband med att man ger den här informationen, ni fick den här platsen, så berättar man varför fick ni inte den platsen ni ville ha då, i detalj. Och det har vi ju sett positiva effekter av, att man får mindre frågor, mer förståelse, kanske mindre överklagningar och så vidare. Så den typen av informationssatser har man ju så att säga varit inne och nosat på. Men i det här fallet då, i samband med att beskedet ges. Så det vi har funderat på är ju som sagt, jag har varit inne på, att hur kan vi med den här data som vi har och informationen som finns i systemen nu för tiden, hur kan vi göra skolvalet mer transparent innan det ens har börjat, medan det faktiskt pågår, och för både familjer och huvudmän. Och hur kan vi tillämpa så att säga, det finns ju massa ny beteendevetenskaplig forskning som liksom vi använder i andra fall. Hur kan vi tillämpa den i de här situationerna och få folk att liksom, ta bättre beslut helt enkelt. Och det här är något vi har funderat på ett tag. Vi har inte kommit igång med det än. Men då kan man ju säga att det som har hänt nu är att vi i samband med vår forskning stötte på Chris som snart ska få introducera sig på Yale. Och det visar sig att de har redan börjat med det här. Ett gäng, han och hans gäng. Och gjort det i ett flertal länder i Sydamerika och USA. Och har ett system som verkar fungera väldigt bra och som nu har fått alltså de har publicerat resultat i diverse olika forskningstidskrifter och sådär utifrån de här insatserna de har gjort. Så vi tänkte, varför ska vi göra det om någon redan har gjort det jättebra? Så vår idé var väl helt enkelt att vi kan ju ta hit den plattformen som de har och lägga den på vår. Och det här webbinariet är väl egentligen ett första steg i det, för att se vad är intresset för en sån lösning, vad tror ni, kan det funka bra hos er och så vidare. Så jag kommer låta Chris presentera det här, vad de gör och hur det ser ut och hur det funkar och vad resultaten är. Och det är egentligen webbinariets huvudsakliga innehåll. Och sen så om någon är intresserad av att prata mer om det här så kommer jag berätta lite på slutet bara om hur vi eventuellt går vidare. Så det är det jag tänkte säga. Om ni har några frågor eller så där så kan vi försöka ta dem på slutet. Men jag tänker att vi ser till så vi hinner igenom presentationen så att vi får all information. That's all I had to say, Chris. So feel free to start whenever you want.
Great, thank you. Thank you. I know what you said in the intro because I read what you wrote, but I have no idea what you just said. So I'm assuming you said what you wrote, and thank you for the intro. And I think you're absolutely correct. I am gonna share my screen now, and I'm going to right here share my screen and start my presentation. So we're really excited to be here from Tether Education, and we are excited to tell you about what we have been working on. So who we are as an introduction: we're a group of academics, data scientists, developers, designers, and policy experts that have been working on trying to make school choice systems work better for people, better for everybody that's involved. And we have been finding over almost a decade of research and implementations with policymakers that more information can really help these systems work to reach their goal, which is to make education more accessible and to help families. And so we have both found evidence and proven effectiveness, both in the part on the academic side, but also on the implementation with policymakers. And we've worked in many different countries, different cities, different contexts. Especially during COVID, there's been a lot of adoption of digital platforms in very challenging settings when many people aren't very digital. So a lot of the challenges are expanded when people aren't sure kind of how to deal with these web platforms. So our mission, we believe in our mission is very important because we think that open, transparent school choice systems are really important, and they face challenges. And we think that what we're doing can help them work better. So evidence that we find providing personalized information, better information at the right time, can help families understand and make better choices, and overall it makes the whole system work better. And the best part is these solutions about information that leverage technology are really cost effective. In the end of the day, these things get a lot of bang for buck. So our proposal, or our suite of kind of things that we have found that work well together, are basically three with an expansion. One is an explorer, and an explorer that I'll show you in a second, that goes beyond having just pins on a map, but tries to get information and digital content, and in particular virtual kind of experiences, so people to get to know schools and without having to necessarily go there, and get to know them a little more, and to get a little more information that parents like, to actually have them use it. And it's a platform for disseminating information of other types, like how to apply or different simulators or whatnot. So there's our Explorer, that's for a local government or a city or whatnot. A second set of things are communication and feedback, is basically a suite of tools that help the administrators or policymakers keep people informed and keep giving them information at very important points in time, like when they apply, or before they apply, and after they apply, with how, what they can do to improve what their options are, and to also disseminate other types of information the policymaker wants. The third thing is a set of tools that are linked with the Explorer that have to do with analytics, and it's also about transparency. So one part of that is just showing people what's happening so that they understand what the system is like. So many times It's just enough to show, well, there's many people that want to go to the same spot. And that's what, kind of showing them how it works in a very transparent way helps people understand, and it helps them kind of get informed early. It also has analytics for policymakers, so policymakers can make decisions. And the last part is to be proactive in outreaching people and to getting out there to connect with people, is to basically use the content and the information that's available, but getting out there to put it in front of people where they're hanging out, which is on social media. And so trying to do that in a smart way to get people informed before they show up to apply is another thing that leverages the other aspects. So I'll go one by one. I'll first talk about the Virtual School Explorer. And so the Virtual School Explorer, the idea is that, we started actually almost a decade ago trying to put a lot of statistics about schools and their test scores and how many teachers and things like that on a website for people to look at when they had to choose. These weren't very successful in terms of getting people to go on there and look at them. And what we found over time was that, it was much easier to get people to pay attention and to be interested when they could see content in a way that's more familiar to what they normally consume content. Like they see videos or testimonials about teachers or principals saying things about the school, or ex-alumni talking about what they liked about the school, virtual tours of the place so they can see what it looks like. And so basically an opportunity for the school to show things that they normally wouldn't have the opportunity to show in a statistics. For example, what their pride points, what they're proud about. I think there's somebody that's got their mic unmuted, I think. I know, Danny, if you're there, if you can, okay. So let me just show you a live website of the Explorer that's live and this is just a video tape of a live website that we have for all of Chile. You can see that you can kind of look for, you put a place where you live. You can look at the schools that are around and the kind of highlight, choose the ones that have slots available or other aspects of them and select a few, and then kind of choose them to add them to your list. And as you get involved kind of in them, you can see that they can host more content, like their pride points, like what are they proud about? And then, digital, videos that they can explain, transportation, like how to get there, and are there slots available in different, levels. And then just other content that could be interesting, like extracurriculars and things. They can compare them. They can choose what characteristics they want to use to compare. And it's basically any different types of characters about infrastructure or extracurriculars or whatever people might want to do. And so it puts this more on the side of the parents to kind of look around and find things. Now, the key thing is to have this digital content to make, I think we found that it makes the people have more fun kind of when they're on there. So, and it is another way that this gets done for for example, for a city or a municipality. And what we've worked with is you could have an Explorer that's just for your schools on your website. And so if people want to find out about them, they can explore them. And notice we talk about exploring and not finding. We think that people don't know the options available to them. The ones they know about are the ones they want to find out more about. They're going to apply. Those are not the problem, really. It's mostly we want people to find out that there's other options available too, because typically we want people to apply to things, both that they know them really well, so that when they go, they know what they're getting into. And the second is that they are aware that there's multiple options that they might like, so that if they don't get into the first option, they still could maybe like some others. So this is just highlighting where you could get your logo, where you basically people can search and explore the schools that are from your set of schools that you want people to kind of look find out about. And a lot of this is kind of configurable depending on the context. And then the digital profiles have the, hold the content that has the, discussion. We found that teachers and principals and administrators like this format where they can say in their own words what they think is cool about their school and about their community, and that they like to participate in this generally, much more in the settings that where it's just about statistics, where teachers feel doesn't represent what's actually happening at the school. So with this, this is basically a little bit more detail about the digital profile. So here we try to get people, it's kind of hard to go visit a school and get to know it, and there's not a lot of time kind of for schools to start, they can host visit days and things like that, but a lot of the content to show, like, look, this school that I've never heard of, like for example, want someone to maybe consider a school that they haven't heard of, that's not the school that they wanted to go to, but the school might be amazing, but since the parents never heard of it, they're like, I don't know about it, I don't like that, I've never heard of it, why? But if they can see what it looks like, and then they can see that it's actually kind of similar to the school that they like, it's like have similar infrastructure, the kids there sound cool, they're talking about their sports, and the teachers are nice, they sound nice, it might make the parent think, maybe I will find out more about that school, and maybe it's not so bad. And this is like really important to some extent, because most parents like the schools that they go to eventually, but when they're choosing, sometimes it feels like a very high stakes thing when it actually maybe isn't. So this is just another way to show the digital content and the information about schools. The idea is that we try to make sure that once we have this digital content and we have this Explorer, we want to basically put this in front of families at every point of contact that they might run into, learning about an opportunity to learn about schools in the city. So for example, the virtual Explorer is one thing that'll pick up people organically from Google search, or for example, if they come to your website, or if you email them or send them text messages. But you might also get people at the school website. You might get people on the school's Instagram account, for example, and or even physically at the school outside, they can see a QR code. And so this just shows that if you come through the virtual Explorer, you can connect to somebody from the school that will then help you think about, or somebody from the city that will help you navigate, like, what should I do? Where do I sign up? Like, how can I do this? And so we try to help coordinate families to learn about the school with the digital content, but then we want them to connect to a representative, somebody that can talk to them and help them onboard them. And this could be, it could be like a help desk that's at the city, or it could be a representative from the school that puts their schedule like on Zoom, or for example, says like from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Fridays, we allow visitors to come if they register, and they can come and see the school. And so we have this additional part here is for onboarding, like, some of the things that are included in for example, Danny's suite of tools. So that now with the Explorer and with like the basically kind of touch points with the families where that we can show them material. The second thing is there's like an additional thing is to leverage the content to kind of connect all the different touch points and leverage it to do outreach. And so one thing is, for example, is to have a lot of this content on like on Instagram, where people are, on there anyway, is to have the content from Instagram that the community creates appear on their digital profile. So we integrate both of these things so that as teachers and people are doing things about events or whatever, these things automatically upload to their digital profile if they put hashtag, digital profile or whatever. And then so you can kind of share those things kind of simultaneously. And some of this digital content makes for good posts and kind of good things that you can use both to put on your profile, but also to put on marketing if you do a digital marketing campaign, you have good content to put out there. So you get much more attention if the school wants to let people know about what's going on. Okay, I had a video going on with some noise. You probably didn't hear, but it was pretty loud over here. So this is just to show you some evidence on traction. So, I mean, I've been working with these kind of trying to get information out to families for a while, and some of these don't work very well just because they somehow don't pick up, traction from the side of the parents. So this is just showing you number of profile clicks, this graph, this bar graph on the bottom, over the last year on the website that we hosted for Chile, for the government of Chile. And what it shows is, and key points in time, like end of December is when everyone gets their results from the schools. And during the end of the year is when they're applying. And then in March is when the school year starts. And we send people to the Explorer from the assignment platform. But in March, it's organic. Like people just went on it by themselves. And we had in a week, almost 200,000 profile clicks just in a week of organic people going on there, looking at schools and trying to find out things. And we've implemented these things in many other cities. And we tend to have, and we've had over, I guess now we're at 1.5 million, but we had the people on here was just like added up to like 1 million visits. Now, a cohort in Chile is like 250,000 people in the whole country. So 1 million visits is a lot for a country like that. That's just to show that, it seems that people, like to consume this virtual content about schools. And I'll show you some evidence later on like the effectiveness. So a second aspect to this is now we have a bunch of content. It could be up online all year, basically, and people can show up to the city and learn about the options whenever. And the second thing is to now, when we want to, during the school choice process, we want to basically boost the communications and feedback that's already kind of happening to help families make better choices. And we're going to take advantage of this Explorer and the digital content, but we're also going to give them very specific information about their applications. So this is basically a sketch of how it works. So during the school choice process, there's some registration. There's a part where families have to explore options. There we can use the Explorer. They can apply. Then they apply. They have to choose and rank schools. They get assigned, and then they have to enroll. And there's different points over this where we can provide personalized information to help families avoid making mistakes and potentially choosing schools that they're more aware of and that they're more willing to like later, and avoid them not getting assigned to one of the first things that they wanted. So how does that work? Well, we have different moments in time where we can give the information. We can give the information, after they register, we can provide information to them, like these are schools near your house. Like you might want to explore them, and then show them information, this digital content that's kind of fun to use for them to kind of look on there. As they explore, you can suggest other additional options as they start clicking on things and looking at things. When they apply, you can also give them feedback both on the options that they could additionally add, but you can also give them feedback on their chances of being admitted to those schools, especially if they are applying to very demanded schools and they might not get in. We can alert them to that and tell them these are great schools. A lot of people like them, but for these reasons, you might want to look at some additional schools that are similar, that are also in your neighborhood, that have similar characteristics, just in case it doesn't work out. And this helps because it avoids people not getting assigned to one of the things that they wanted initially and then being disappointed. But if you can get out early to that and kind of show them other options, they have time to kind of process and learn about the other options. And then when they do get it, if they don't get into the thing they wanted, they get into something else, it's something that they chose, and they feel more empowered with that assignment than an administrative assignment. And the final part is analytics dashboard for policymakers, for people like you, to keep track of this and see where there might be issues. And this is something that's happening in real time. So you can see maybe too many people are applying in this area, not enough people are applying over in this other area. Maybe we need to do more advertising over here, maybe over there. We need to reach out and see if, maybe we can make some more slots, but it gives you more information to make choices. So this is one type of feedback that's in-app. It's in real time, and it happens when people press enter. Like they apply, they're applying, they press enter, and basically what we do is we plug in with Danny and we calculate what people's chances are at being admitted with a prediction, basically using the applications to date and the prediction of what the applications will be. We can already kind of calculate some chances that the person will get into some of the things that they wrote down. sometimes people apply to things that are very highly demanded, or that they don't have very high priority, or there's not very many slots, and they don't know. There's no way for the family to know necessarily. And so this, you can give, this is like an example of feedback. It says, look, a lot of people have been applying to this school. We can see in the data, and it's great, but you might want to consider some other options to add to your list, because this one is highly demanded. And this is something that you're telling them like right away, and then you immediately can show them, send them to options where they can like add additional things. So we've shown in data, and we have a paper published in the Quarterly Journal of Economics, is one of the most prestigious economic journals, that we are studying how behavior of families, how they choose. And we show that what we see in the graph on the x-axis is the risk of the application of not being assigned to anything that the family wanted. So it's going to trigger an administrative assignment. When we tell people right above 30% risk or more, the government of Chile allowed us, implemented this warning. If they had 30% or more risk of not being assigned, we would let them know with this warning. And what that warning did was 1 out of 4 families added an additional school. And then they were almost for sure assigned to something. Whereas the families that didn't add at school and we didn't tell, because risk was 25%, for example, those were they had less chances of getting assigned. And this, we replicated it across time over different cities. And now we've implemented in 5 different countries. And it's applicable not to everybody, but there's a subset of families in the population that are maybe optimistic about their chances and they're not fully informed, or they apply to too few schools. Maybe they don't understand kind of what's going on, and they just kind of write down a couple, and they're just unlucky that they just applied to things. Or there's sometimes rules that apply that give priority to some groups. For example, if you apply to a school and there's only 2 slots, and there's already too many kids that have siblings there, they're going to get in, and the other families have no chance. And they don't know that there's only 2 slots, and that they were unlucky that year too many people had siblings. And so we let them know so that they have a chance to maybe react on time. Traditionally, in other systems, I'm not sure how it works exactly in Sweden, but in other places, if you don't get assigned, you get assigned an administrative slot, which you didn't necessarily get to choose. And it's then a lot of people get surprised, and they're kind of disappointed, and some of them get really angry, and they don't really understand what happened. But we found that those families find, if we tell them before, they are much less likely to be angry and disappointed, because they kind of knew what was happening and they understood before it happened. Okay, another way to communicate with families is to do what we call our personalized feedback reports, which are more detailed examples of that previous pop-up. Like the pop-up that says an alert could also come in the format of a dashboard or an email with a link, a personal link, where you can track the process the whole time. For example, it could say what your chances are of getting assigned in every moment in time. Because as applications come in, we can be simulating and predicting what's going to happen. So people don't have a big surprise at the end when they find out what happened. The other thing it could do is be giving information about the other schools nearby. And it could also be giving them suggestions that, for example, are configured by policymakers like yourselves, that could say, look, I want to tell people if this happens, let them, make sure that they get a message that says this and this. And these things can be disseminated both through a website or through text message, or in Latin America, we use a lot of WhatsApp and other formats that some parents prefer. And those methods to communicate with them sometimes work better, and especially with populations like immigrants and things that aren't so connected to they don't check their email as much. This is maybe doesn't translate to Sweden. Maybe everyone, their email is fine, but we have the flexibility to use other methods to reach people. And sometimes it's the people in that 5% of all the families that are the new families that don't know what's going on. Those are the ones you have to help the most, because those are the ones that are less connected. They're not really sure. They don't have friends and neighbors that can help them explain what to do. So Here, it's just like an example of like what one of these feedback reports the family's getting is like, look, you applied to these 3 things. There's still 2 weeks left in the application process. And here's some information about, what's going on to date. Now, as this is happening, all the people in the city are getting information and they're reacting and they're applying. And we're simulating what's happening. We're working with Danny and we're simulating kind of what's happening. We can see applications coming in, a dashboard that shows the policymaker like yourselves, this is the situation right now. And you could imagine this heat map of Copenhagen is showing like where congestion is happening, like where areas, are the families that living that are like, for example, it could be different things. In this case, it just shows like the chances of somebody not being assigned to their first choice, like where are those located? And or potentially it could be, where are they not applying yet? People haven't applied yet, and we need to do something to get more people to apply. We expected 10 applications in this neighborhood and we've only had 2. So that allows you to maybe launch some targeted marketing campaigns to those areas to say, hey, remember, it's application time. Or maybe we send out another round of text messages to everybody, and different things. What's important about this is it's information on time to react to what's happening, and instead of information about what happened later. Because after it already happened, the parents that are super mad or the problems that happened are harder to fix. So that's the part about communications, and the communication both to families and communication to policymakers so they can make decisions. And the whole theme is that if you have the right information at the right time, you can make better choices. That's true for families and it's true for policymakers. Now, the second suite of these are tools that are going to be available all year round that are about trying to get people to be informed before the school choice process even happens. So this is just basically putting the information from the year before and the year before and the year before out there into the community so that they can learn about it over time. And they can, so this links up very nicely with the Explorer, because you can have the schools out there all year round, where schools can add information, like if they have a soccer championship or something, they can add that. And so people go on there, but they can also see things like, well, how many people applied last year? Is it hard to get in? And so this dashboard that's associated, this is like the New Haven Public Schools is a city in the US where I'm actually right now. This is the city where Yale University is at. And they have a dashboard where you can see kind of what happened in the past. For example, in this demo, you can see it kind of clicking through. So this is like a report for a particular school that says, the number of kids assigned, that have, basically just gives you a bunch of statistics about the system. Like last year, there's 50 people, and now there's, 2020, 2021. And it shows you information like how many people applied, what ranking did they get in. And it's basically like a way, and this is like a dashboard that basically shows the community, like how many people applied to this school last year and what rank, like where did they rank it? How many people got assigned? How many people didn't get assigned? So I don't know if this fits exactly the needs of the people in the cities in Sweden, but in the US, more so than in Latin America, in the US in particular, there's a need to kind of be transparent and say, look, the office that runs admissions isn't doing anything. We're not trying to, trick you or anything. Here's all the data. We're being super transparent. You can look at this and see what's going on here. And the data's out there. And so people can basically feel that they have access to that. And that just has reduced kind of requests, for example, on what's going on. Now, there's also information that potentially, so actually this is kind of giving you a visual of the details of the assignment from the centralized assignment. So it's different ways of communicating with people, because it's kind of complicated. Like I think many of you know, like doing the algorithm, all this stuff is kind of hard to explain to people. So you have different ways of showing them, like, listen, this is like the number of people that have applied. Like you can also, like, for example, here's like a heat map that shows the people that live around the school, how many people applied to the school from each block and different things. Like, it's not really like something crucial to make any decisions necessarily, but it is like information that we've found that the school administrators find interesting and that families find interesting just to better understand like what's happening. I think one of the things that are useful about here is shows that, like, for example, these are the schools that I'm sorry if it's a little blurry, but basically it's like, if somebody applied to this school, what are other schools that they also applied to? And so then you can see like, oh, these are like similar schools. And those are like things that maybe I should go check out if, because those are similar things. We also show things like a similar graph like this that shows things like the kids from my elementary school, where did they go last year? And you can see like 10 went to this school, 5 went to that school, 3 went to that school. And that's like another way to kind of like discover schools and learn about where the things are. Now, all these things are configurable based on the city and what they want to put out there to the families. And so this is basically like a suite that is kind of already built that plugs into Danny's system that puts information out there. This is also the same dashboard that principals, for example, would have access to edit their profiles and to upload information. So overall, and this is just to kind of wrap up, we have 3 types of things that kind of are complementary with each other, and they work to disseminate information to the community in different moments in time. Some of these things are there year round, and so they're helpful for year round to help people, for example, at a city kind of organize when people come and they want to know about what to do about schools. You can schedule a visit, you schedule a talk to them, and then show them on the Explorer, these are the schools that are available, this is how you do it. And you kind of like, it's like helping them, it's kind of helping coordinate the way you communicate. A second thing is just the ability to communicate to people in key moments in time, like during the school application process. Some families might do things because they don't understand. They might make mistakes that then could lead them to be really disappointed. And then, I don't know, even like sue the city or something to say like, oh, I want this to change. And it would have been much easier to do a preventive measure to like let them know before. And if then they don't follow your advice, then it's like it's like you have a better sense of like, look, I tried to tell you that this school is really, I tried to explain, I put all this information out there. And then finally, the transparency and analytics is basically helping people interpret complicated information and also provide a clear signal to the community that the city's trying their best to put the information out there and be transparent about what's happening to try to help families. So these kind of 3 different things are things that we think work together, and they could be boosted by, producing more digital content that kind of we also do, but that's like not necessary. You could do additional stuff and additional kind of marketing campaigns that are, maybe super targeted. Maybe you want to do certain things to highlight certain schools, like a new school, or you expanded capacity at a certain place. You want to promote that one in particular. So those are kind of the ways kind of these all work together. And we're looking for partners to pilot this with in the context of Sweden. We think that there's a lot of similarities between the issues that cities have with school choice in Sweden as they do in cities in the US, and also in cities in other countries like in Latin America where they have many, many schools, like in Santiago and Bogota, 2 cities we work in, they have 3,000 schools all in one platform. And families, imagine how difficult it is for families to find see what's going on. But those issues also appear in New Haven, Connecticut, where we have 40 schools, where people all want to go to like 2 or 3 schools that are depending on their neighborhood. And the other schools are really good too. And they're right nearby. And so I think this could potentially help. And we'd love to work with some interested partners to kind of see how to adapt these things to the Swedish context and learn how to improve these things. And we've learned a lot so far working with Danny, and we think it's fascinating. It would be a great opportunity to be able to try some of these things out in the context of Swedish cities and municipalities. So thank you. This is my talk. I think we do some Q&A. I don't know, Danny, if you want to jump in at this point or not.
Yeah, sure. Should we see if there are any questions? You could raise your hand. if you have any questions. Okay. Yeah, so there's a few thoughts from the Swedish perspective, looking at this. So Sweden, as I mentioned in the introduction, we have a lot of, there's a lot of people that, depending on what you compare to, but for Swedish colleges, a lot of people that don't actually get what they want, and there's a lot of these lawsuits, right? And that's especially given sort of the setup in Sweden, where you have this sort of right to make everything into a lawsuit. If you don't get what you want, you can always sort of take that to court and have that tested. And in the Swedish context, we have this sort of right now very sort of unclear laws and practice about what is actually allowed. How are you allowed to assign students or whatever? So all of these settings are every time it happens, it's sort of cumbersome and worrisome for the municipality, and it takes a lot of time. So usually you end up like a year afterwards, you get the information that you placed the student wrong and you have to redo this, and then the student has already been there for a year. And that's because the whole court system is so clogged up. So I really find these sort of these personal feedback, like the ongoing, you should do this and you should do that, really fascinating. And I saw the graph you showed, where you showed sort of the percentage that sort of shifted. Could you just go through that again? So you said 20% and 5%. There were two numbers there. What that's like a sort of.
And this, yeah. So I mean, the 20 and the 5% is basically is specifically in the context of Chile. And again, we basically this. What's fascinating is this is the same graph 2 years. This is the 2 different years, in 2020 and 2021. And we get it's almost exact same numbers. Like each year, it's like replicates. There's always a group of families that falls. So what happens there is we have, maybe like 20% of people won't get into something they wanted in this first round, and because they wrote down, I don't know, and usually it's because they only put down a couple of things, and they both were super demanded, and maybe they didn't have, very high priority. Like they didn't have anything that boosted them. So when they're applying, what this shows is basically, so the 20% is basically the people aren't getting in, but it would have been 25%. So I guess they're 24%. So we basically we're placing, 5% more kids, which is 20% or 25% of all the non-placements.
Yeah.
So it's like a big chunk of people get moved from getting into not something that they wanted, that they chose initially, to something that they added to like their third choice. And what we find, and I didn't have, more, I didn't expand on this, but this is a paper that's published. It's on our website, and we have a bunch of surveys that parent satisfaction actually increases a lot when they get into something that they chose, even if it's their third choice, relative to not getting in. And they also find that the system is more fair. Like if you ask them, do you like the system? Even if they don't get assigned, because it seems that it's because they understand when it doesn't work, it's like, they understand why. It's like, well, I wanted to go to the best one that everybody wants to go to. And I guess it's fair that if I can't get in, but if they don't know, they don't have that detail, they seem to get frustrated, and they feel like somebody wasn't, they tricked them, or I don't know, something happened. And so this basically, what this graph is showing is this percent. This is basically like the y-axis shows like if what percent added a school to their list during the application process after we did the pop-up. So basically it was this, everybody, all the people that are in here press enter, and then we calculated their risk, and their risk was of the people that had positive risk of not getting in. So 1 on the x-axis is not getting in at all. Like there's no way you're getting in. And 0 is like you're getting in for sure in one of the options you put down. And so if it's as the risk is going up, you see that people add schools. There's like a slope going upward. But right after the 0.3, where the dotted line is, that's where the pop-up happens. Because the Chilean government didn't want to tell everybody because they were worried of freaking out everybody. They're like, I don't know, but okay, well, let's tell the people that are like really going to have trouble. And so then those people added the school, and it's about 25% of those families added an additional school. By adding additional school, they lower their risk of non-assignment significantly. And that's not shown here, but that's the number, the 5 and the 20%.
Yeah.
So this is, if you think about it, this is not even giving them recommendations or anything like this is just the pop-up that's like, oh, hey, we see that many people have applied and we're predicting, we think that this might be risky. So we suggest, maybe you should look at some other options. And that's so easy and such a little intervention, but it seems to help this group of people. And then if you follow up with this stuff, you can basically say, look, there's all these options nearby. You apply to these 2 things, but there's other 3 things that have similar things. They also have this and they also have that. And moreover, if you ask them things, so we can do dynamic things like, what are you looking for? Like, what are things is there something in particular so I think this helps a lot. It helps a lot with the helping people discover other options, but it also helps with this, what you were just mentioning, like the disappointment, the discrete jump in unhappiness, like when the results come out, like somebody going, I'm going to go do a lawsuit. Like, I mean, the US people don't do that much. But they do show up at the office and yell at people, at the people at our partners. Like they go and they like the person there is office some people come and they're like mad and they throw things, and those things fall a lot when you start to just let people know that they had options, partly because they use the options. And so they don't actually fall in that case. And the ones that don't, now they know that it's coming. So that they don't like get super angry all of a sudden. And when they do come, at least here in New Haven, one of the things that they like is to be like, listen, I told you on this day and this day, I sent you messages. I warned you. I mean, this is how the system works. And I tried my best to help you, but you just didn't like pay attention. So I'm sorry. Like now you have to do the regular process, which is to, get your administrative assignment or whatever. And that kind of helps with, at least it helps with other parents and other people thinking whether the system is fair. Cause they're like, I don't know. I reacted when you told me. This other guy didn't pay attention. So it's kind of on him.
But I mean, it adds, so it's not just a warning, right? I mean, that's the good thing. Like, you're just not saying you're in trouble. You're saying, hey, there's a risk of this happening. Here's help. Here's suggestions. You could look at these schools and here's sort of information about them. You can go on the digital tour or whatever. I mean, you've added sort of, it's a helping hand. It's not just a warning. Like
exactly. Well, I mean, we got feedback recently in the city of Bogota. We got a bunch of emails when we sent out there. We disseminate through WhatsApp as well as through email, and we got some interesting kind of feedback from some of the families. They were writing back, to the help desk, and they were like, the government hasn't ever helped me with anything. They don't like give me they haven't told me on time, like tell me things that I need to do to like fix things. They just tell me that it didn't work, and then I have to go to an office and so they were kind of appreciative that you were actually looking out for example, what you're saying, Danny, which is like, look, this might not work. So I suggest that there's these other options for you. Let me help you. Like go, but here's some options. Go back and you can adjust your application and add more things, etc. I guess there's a hand up.
Tommy, do you want to ask your question?
Yes. Hi there, Chris, and thank you for the presentation. I don't know anything about the school systems in South America and hardly in Sweden either, but what I do know is that we have both municipal schools and private schools. I assume we have both sides represented in this meeting, and at the end of the day, we are competitors. So my question is, have you implemented this anywhere where only the municipal schools use the system, or only the private schools? And what can you see? Because right now in Sweden, I think that private schools can spend a lot more effort on marketing, but we can't. But perhaps a system like this would equal the marketing somehow, especially with the Explorer.
That's exactly right. And I think that's, I mean, so in the Latin American context, which is actually one of the things that the reasons why I got into studying, and I was so interested in Danny's research when we first met, was because in Latin America, there is a system that's much more similar to Sweden in the sense that there's public and private provision of education services. And in particular in Chile is one of the only other countries has a system of vouchers that's similar to Sweden. And so there, when we did the centralized assignment, the platform includes all the schools together, public and private, when you apply centrally, to try to help it, be more kind of not when the schools are not on the same kind of system. Sometimes it generates kind of inefficiencies because people leave to go to another school and then they leave a hole, and we have the key thing that actually I think is if you're a school district, like a public school district, you have some economies of scale to kind of have, for example, an Explorer with all the schools on there, and then you want to take advantage of that scale to kind of leverage it so that all your schools can kind of create content, and you can disseminate it through kind of one of these platforms. And then on top of that, basically the any marketing you do, if you can do it in a targeted way, it's much cheaper instead of just blanket, so private schools, for example, in the US and in Latin America, would actually spend way more money on advertising, but they still spend money in ways that are dumb, like ads on the street or banners on the like I have like here in New Haven, there's like a bunch of things on the street, like those are really expensive relative to marketing campaigns on social media that are super cheap, and you can target them to moms that are have 4-year-old children that live in this neighborhood, it's much cheaper. So so I actually do think you're absolutely right. Our mission actually is to have a way where we create a lot of content so families can find what they want easily and learn about schools easily. And if they can only see some schools, like say, for example, the few super fancy schools, and they can't see the rest, that's kind of like it's not good for them. It's because they could find some really cool public schools too. I'm not sure again how it is in Sweden, but in Chile and in New Haven, the public schools have really cool infrastructure sometimes and really cool programs that private schools can't necessarily do because they specialize in other ways. And so getting people to see that is important. At the same time, I think this helps private schools that are small also kind of say, I specialize in special needs kids of this type, and I do this type of special program. They can tell people about that too. And so they're kind of complements. I think that it's true that there's competition, but if everyone's on the same playing field in terms of information, because it's so easy to provide information, then I think then the families are going to be able to, choose what they like. And we won't be trying to, it won't be a thing about stealing people necessarily. If public schools currently are at a disadvantage because they don't get as much information out there, then this is a way to improve that. But I think the best is if everybody could have information out there that is kind of similar. So this also levels, you can't do a video that's like a Steven Spielberg movie on here. It's kind of the same 30-second clips for everybody. It's kind of standardized as well. I don't know. I think that's a super important point. I guess there's another hand up.
Michelle.
Sorry, I have to unmute myself. I think this is really a cool idea, but that was one of my questions with the private schools and the public schools in terms of the virtual school explorer, because it'd be the question of who administers the virtual school content and who creates that content so that you have an equal basis, because you can see even at some public schools, you have a teacher who's really, really good at making films. They can do an amazing 30-second film, and you have another school where it's a whole bunch of old fogies that doesn't have any.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Because if I understood it correctly, it's the schools themselves that are filling the content in the virtual school explorer, or is it something centrally done so that you see that it all has an equal balance of information?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, actually so the first version of this explorer was I don't know, maybe 2012 or something. in Chile, we tried to do this with the government, and there we had the exact same thing that happened. We were like, upload stuff here. And then we just had a super big inequality in terms of how things looked. Like, say a public school would have like a logo that was like, I don't know, made in paint, like in 1990, I don't know. And it was like, it was bad. And so what we did now is we realized also that the content production itself is cheap if you do it at scale. So what we did is basically we hired the people that do the videos and the drones and the interviews and all these things. And we standardized it. And then we have people, like, instead of you being a freelancer that goes out and charges you a lot to do a virtual tour or something, or like, you basically have people that you can schedule them to do like 4 schools a day, you know, all the same. And kind of the school has the opportunity to say, like, I want to highlight this, I want to highlight that. But the way they highlight it is the same kind of context. Like, you get 3 pride points to talk about. You have interviews with the head, you know, like the principal or the administrators, 1 minute to talk about the kind of the school's educational kind of focus, and then, you know, 30-second clips from different, you know, community members. And we basically create that content. Schools can still upload pictures and they can edit the text, like, and they can, you know, they can add content, but this, for the same reason you're saying, the idea was to keep it very standardized. So it's also easier for families to kind of compare things, because they're like, oh, like, I want to see the 30-second clip about sports at each school. And they're kind of, it's easier for them to kind of see them and learn about them kind of quickly. So yeah, that point is literally like, we kind of took that over, that part, both for economies of scale, because it's cheaper, and that way you can get it to everybody. And you can kind of do some moderation of the content and keep it kind of focused on, like, for example, the testimonies are specific questions. Like, everyone gets the same questions. Like, say one extracurricular that you think is really cool that kids are excited about at your school. And then they're like, oh, we love band or whatever. And so, I don't know, if a kid's kind of nerdy and likes chess and math and something, you can find a place that does that. But like,
how often do you update it then? Now you guys, I mean, I'm thinking if that's something that you'd have to have in a system of updating, you know, every other year, every 3 years or something like that, because the programs can also change.
Yeah, no, exactly. So what we basically have it on the dashboard. You can, so basically the way that we were working so far is this is like a subscription, and the subscription comes with updates and created new content. For example, the schools that we have in other places that subscribe to, you know, the setup, they get an initial like setup of content, but then they can choose certain dates in the year when something cool happens at the school. So you can capture that, like the day that there's some event or some, you know, I don't know, a soccer match, or like the day that everyone gets a prize or something. So they can schedule those during the year, and that's like part of the content that gets added. And then they get to do that again the year after. So if they want to redo some things, they can use some of their like credits to do that, and they can schedule it on their dashboard. They can schedule this digital content production. And the idea is that that's also part of the idea is that, I mean, some of this is actually pretty cheap. Like, for example, the interviews, it's like over Zoom. Like, you could just do a 15-minute Zoom where you meet with somebody, you schedule, and you videotape them answering certain questions. And that's like pretty cheap to provide. And it doesn't even have to be like somebody in the city doing it. But the other stuff, like the visit, like say, it's like, oh, I want a cool video, like to highlight, like a 1-minute highlight of our soccer team that like somehow like our public school team, whatever, won the city championship or I don't know, whatever. That thing is a thing that the best would be for you to tell us, oh, this day in October, we're going to have the day, and we schedule it and send somebody over there to kind of capture it. So anyway, I guess the way to answer your question short is that you get credits that you can use to kind of update material or get new material.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're a bit 10 minutes over time now, so I think we'll stop now. So let me just sort of end this by saying what we're going to do now is we're going to sort of basically put together a proposal. As Chris mentioned, we're looking for pilot, sort of municipalities and voucher schools in Sweden that sort of want to be part of a pilot, sort of thinking of exactly how we can introduce this in Sweden and how sort of the setup and how it should work. So we'll be in contact regarding that quite soon. And if you guys are interested, if anybody's interested, or if anybody has any questions that they didn't think of later or didn't have time to ask now, you could just shoot me an email and I'll make sure that Chris and his team gets it, and we'll be in touch. So thank you, Chris, for taking time.
No, thank you for listening, and it's exciting to just think there'll be have a chance to come back to Sweden more often and work with you.
Okay.
All right. Bye, everybody.